Welcome to the Politics of Everything. I'm Amber Daines, your host and podcast producer. This is a half hour of power, a podcast dropping every week where I unpack the politics of everything, from money to motherhood, nutrition to narcissism, startups to secularism, the environment, quality, and much, much more. Our guests are seasoned in the field or topic of their choice, even if you've not heard of them yet. This is a non-partisan show. So while I love exploring varied views and get a buzz from a healthy debate of ideas, this is not a purely blue, white, green program. Please subscribe, tune in and enjoy the politics of everything. Business development is the lifeblood of any organisation. It is in many ways about building connections and capitalising on that, as well as finding new ways to expand your product or service offering to existing customers. However, with sales something being something that people find challenging, even off-putting, what is that gold standard that you need to do great BD? To find out, I'm speaking today to Victoria Butt, who I met probably around 10 years ago through a networking group, the perfect business development environment perhaps. Victoria is the founder and executive search consultant of Parity Consulting, a serial entrepreneur, founder and chief training officer at Evolve Series Sales Training and board member for Entrepreneurs Organisation Sydney and an angel investor for BIPAC Fanga. In 2021, BIPAC Angels was created and it was an angel investment fund exclusively working with supporting females who are Black, Indigenous and people of colour. It was a decade ago that she founded Parity Consulting, a recruitment organisation specialising in placing diverse and capable talent in product pricing, digital marketing and data analytics. Parity was founded to reshape how the industry saw candidates and lift them to be equal to the client. In 2017, she joined EO in Sydney and led the first diversity, equity and inclusion initiative the organisation had seen in the APAC region and now sits on the Sydney board for member success. In 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Victoria set up Evolve Sales Training, an online sales training platform especially for entrepreneurs and small businesses. Based on long-term sales mentoring, this B2B platform provides processes, accountability and frameworks for busy entrepreneurs and sales professionals to drive sustainable higher revenue, something we all want. A mother of 2 young children, a wife, blogger and self-confessed wine snob, I'm with you on that, Victoria. She's passionate about anything to do with diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging. So today we are diving in to discuss the politics of business development. Welcome, Victoria.
Thanks, Amber. Thank you for having me.
Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Since 2017, I have relied on Zencastr's all-in-one web-based solution to make the process quick and painless, the way podcasting should be. If you know me, I'm pretty obsessed with quality guests, quality content and quality sound, and that's what Zencastr allows me to do. Not to mention, it's really easy to use, even for my guests that aren't particularly tech savvy. There's nothing to download. They just click on the link and we start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-production all in the one tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get each episode done. I want you to have the same great experience that I do for all my podcasts and content needs. So I have a special offer for you. If you go to zen.ai/politics of everything and enter this promo code, you'll get 30% off in your first 3 months when you sign up to Zencastr Pro. That's zen.ai, politics of everything. It's now time to share your story. Okay, young Victoria, what did you want to be when you grow up? Did you think you'd be a prima ballerina, an astronaut? Tell us a little bit about what you thought you'd be as a kid and kind of how you ended up where you are today.
Definitely not a prima ballerina. I think I never was quite the right shape for that. So I've been really trying to reflect on this. My parents are working class British, and I just remember growing up in a really hard-working household. They always really installed hard work into me, but always said, I never forget my dad, who's a carpenter, always said that he hoped I didn't have to work as hard as him to maintain and look after my family. So I just remember I just wanted to take care of my folks and make sure they weren't going to worry about, money later in life. And I just remember working super hard, or wanting to work super hard, but also wanted resources. So I started out wanting to be a hairdresser, And then
You do have great hair, by the way. I do notice that
I
about
just
you.
love hair. I've always loved hair. And then I realized that really to make decent money in hairdressing, you had to be super, super talented. And I just wasn't that talented. And then I wanted to be in the army. And that was fulfilling some of the boxes. So, yes, you worked hard. Yes, you made money. But it was going to take a while for me to make money and things. Look, I actually just have the most unromantic story about how I fell into executive search, because I actually started recruiting investment bankers in London, which was not very purposeful, I have to say, but I did earn shit tons of money.
You could make a lot of money doing that. I'm just thinking bankers, they're not short of a dollar.
So that's the thing. My 3 things were like, work hard, make money, be impactful. And I just remember that as a kid. So the whole investment banking thing, look, I impacted a couple of people, but of course they impacted the world. So that was not sustainable for me, but that's ultimately how I fell into executive search.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like you've been successful in that business, clearly, and having had your own business for quite a long time now, and another business has sprung up since. Yeah. I imagine that business development has been a key part of your career and business life. Yeah. Give us a bit of a snapshot into how you approach business development, because for a lot of people, it's a little bit daunting.
Oh, look, I think it's daunting for us all. And of course you have those people out there that, just seem natural and just walk in, get the sale done and walk out. But the reality is for most of us, authentic selling it isn't something that you can do naturally unless you sort of work at it. Look, I have been probably more on the natural side of a business developer because I am extroverted, I am very process orientated, and I love people, I love relationships. So I've got a few of those boxes ticked quite naturally. But I think for me and why I think I've been successful in this area is that I've always approached it in a long-term way. So I've never approached, well, I say never, I've very rarely approached a connection or a relationship with just a sale in mind. Of course, that is absolutely what is one of my objectives, but it is truly one of my objectives. So I've been super long-term orientated, and I think that, I've been told that people really respect that about me, that I can deviate from the sale if it's not in their best interest or, if it's not going to work as a partnership. I'm also a little bit of a dog with a bone, right? So I you'd have
to be an executive search. Let's cut to this because, it's a difficult industry to be successful in sometimes.
It is. And I think in any kind of entrepreneurial world as well, you've got to stay in touch and you've got to follow up. So, oh my goodness, I could give you 100 ways that I've followed up clients in the past, which have been weird and wonderful, just to keep front of mind. And so I think my follow-up process is pretty cool. And I have fun with it, right?
So give us a little example. I'm just picturing you, I don't know, turning up in a Wonder Woman costume going, do you remember me? But mate, we might not be talking about that.
I've got no shame. So I once, oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever told anyone this.
Oh, just tell everyone. There's only 10,000 people listening.
Yeah, I know. I heard your stats, Hannah. It's super impressive. Right. So I was working for a very high-end fund manager. Look, I won't tell you who it is.
No, that's okay. No names is okay.
But they're a pretty cool fund manager. And I got a really big piece of work for them, and I was bloody lucky. Right time, right place. I was 26 years old. Should never have got this mandate. It was more than my salary for 2 years type mandate. And anyway, got this mandate and did my job and did a good job. But I couldn't crack one of the very senior kind of investment portfolio managers. I just couldn't. We just didn't mesh. There was so many different reasons for that. But what was happening is he was having leave-in drinks because he was leaving to go to the US, and he still works for them in New York. And he had off the cuff invited me and a couple of other individuals to his leaving drinks, but I was not invited, right? He sort of just threw it out there. And he was like, you guys should come. And when he said guys, he meant me and 3 of the lads I was with, And that was not going to stop me. Just never forget, right? Turned up at the Ivy Pool bar with all my blooming stilettos and my suit on. And him and a few of his colleagues were sitting in the middle. There's like an island in the middle of the pool. And he saw me and I waved, and I took one of my female staff with me just to look like casual. We were having a drink. Oh my goodness gracious me. He must have thought this person is just too much. As my 5-year-old son says, too much, Mum, too much. But you know what? I put my, shoulders back, head up, went over and said, hey, I just wanted to buy you a drink. I understand what you're leaving do. How you feeling about going to the US? And of course, we've stayed in touch since. He still thinks I'm batty as anything, but that's probably the lowest I've gone.
or maybe that's just great relationship building because they can't ignore you and they can't forget you.
Well, I didn't have a costume on, but I have to say it was I certainly wasn't invited, and I got some frowns. But look, I had a drink and left, so I didn't overstay my welcome.
Excellent. Great products and services don't always mean money spinners. And look, in my career in PR and strategic comms, I'm always amazed when I guess businesses still focus a lot on the shiny stuff. And it's important, things like fabulous social media content on Insta or, great blog posts or sort of, conversation pieces on LinkedIn. But often that doesn't convert to sales. What is the secret sauce that you think some businesses might be missing in that sort of process of training themselves how to get better at it? I think they just think if I put it out there, they will come, but that doesn't always work.
No, it doesn't. Look, that is actually one of the reasons why I set up Evolve Sales Training, because I've been mentoring entrepreneurs and sales professionals my whole life. So although I run 2 recruitment businesses, I've sort of stepped away from them progressively over the last few years and very much gone into advisory and sort of mentorship and things. And to me, it was becoming really upsetting seeing some almost friends and some amazing people with some amazing products, like really good products, not make it, run out of funding, and not make it because the distribution strategy wasn't there, and it wasn't there early enough. So one of the...
And I think that's a big thing. I'm just thinking about that just from sorry to interrupt you, but just thinking from a PR point of view, like there's a couple of publications that always talk about how much money a business has raised and, what a great idea it is. I love to see where those businesses are in 12 months or 5 years because that's not the story we hear. We just think everyone who raises money and has a great idea is going to win. But curious to know how you sort of navigate that. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I completely agree with you, right? So we just hear the story and so many people I speak to, in fact, I'd say 50% of people I speak to are onto a side hustle where they want to make the next big, multi-million and all the rest of it. And I love that. And I love that entrepreneurial pace and the creativity. My first question is, what's the problem with solving? And most of them have got that really down pat. They've done some really good customer testing. So that's the first point, right? What's the problem you're solving and what's the customer pain point? The second is, what will the customer pay for it? Will they pay? How much will they pay? And how often? And unfortunately, that normally comes 5th or 6th to a lot of people. And so for me, I'm like, unless you can commercialize it, how are you going to make money? People will say to me all the time, like, what do you think about this? Or have you got some advice to me? Can you mentor me and all the rest of it? And I'm like, look, what do you need? Like, I don't think mentors, I know I'm going off track here, but I really don't think a mentorship is like a relationship. So
yeah, absolutely. I don't think you're going off track. I actually think it's an important conversation to have because people want to know what's in the mix,
Well, yeah, it's the whole mentor thing and mentorship thing I find really curious. I mentor people I sort of want to get in bed with in the most kind of cleanest way. There has to be chemistry, there has to be, I have to be useful to them. Nothing worse than being, unuseful to someone, especially when they come to you with something you have no idea about.
Exactly.
It's not ideal. It makes you kind of feel bad as well. But with the whole, my biggest thing is how you gonna make money. And they kind of look at me as though I'm a bit cold. Look, I think that we're not short of ideas, people, right? So we've all got ideas. And I think it's just like, it's all about that execution piece on how it's actually going to work and what the customers will actually pay for it. So before I set up Evolve Sales Training, I was trying to work out what my next thing was, because I was sort of coming to the end of my executive search kind of world. The business is now run by a couple of GMs and they're amazing. And I just, to be honest with you, every time I go in there, I feel like I mess it up. So they just want me to leave now. So I'm like, what do I do now? What do I do next? And I sort of came up with this sort of concept, which isn't where I landed. So I went out to customers, found the pain point, and then I went into build mode, right? I did what everyone else does, even though I know better. I did what
when you say
everyone
build
does.
mode, like you're doing the functionality pieces, you're like writing the program, you're doing the website, whatever.
The marketing, I did the logo, I got the name. Do you know how much money I spent on those GoDaddy websites? You know, the ones that you can buy the domain name?
Yeah.
So in 1 year, I spent $2,000 on different domain names, and none of them I'm using. And it was because I was an idiot, right? What I did is I said, I've got a pain point, and I did some great customer research. I was quite proud of my research. I spent about 4 months on it, non-stop. And then I just jumped into solution. I did exactly what I'm not supposed, like I tell people not to do. Spent all this money on God knows what. And then, of course, realised no one was going to pay for what I was building. So I shut everything down and started again.
Oh, my goodness. And that's an expensive and time-consuming process.
Well, it was, but it could have been way worse. I actually have a very, very good friend and mentor of mine, a guy called Damien. He can be a bit brutal at times, but it's what I needed. And he just pulled me aside and he was like, what are you doing? Like, no one's going to pay you that amount of money for that. So it was I was very
Wouldn't you rather hear that than have the echo chamber of, you're fabulous, this is great, and then you find out a year later that was just a complete waste of time?
100%.
I think that's much more valuable.
Absolutely. And you're the same, Amber. I've got small kids. If I'm going to be away from my children, which sometimes I have to be to stay sane, I have to say, but if I'm going to do something...
By choice.
Yeah, exactly, by choice, yeah. But if I am going to miss those, those odd carnivals and, all of those things they do, I've got to be impacting others. And so that's why I really wanted to make sure that Evolve Sales Training was the right price point and all the rest of it. Look, it's still very early days, but it's filling a problem for my other businesses. So that's really helpful. And so far it's been really well received.
So more than 40% of actual salespeople, so these are people that actually have chosen or are in sales for a living, say that prospecting is the most challenging part of that sales process, followed by obviously the closing, around 36% of people find that tricky, and then the qualifying. So how can BD be done organically and authentically? I think people who even love their businesses like you find approaching sales daunting, or they might have some early success, but then what's next?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, sales it doesn't have to be as arduous and tricky as what I think sometimes we make it. It is something that needs to be weaved in organically into a business from the start. So I think I've seen a lot of businesses grow to, say 1 million and they've got a couple of staff and they're doing well, but it's sort of really hard to scale from there. And then they sort of get me in and they say, hey, can you help us on our distribution strategy and can you help us on sales? But sales hasn't been from the start a fundamental part of the culture. In fact, sometimes it's the dirty word. And so from the start, I'm looking to changing people's hearts, not just minds. And that is where it's tricky because culturally in the business, for whatever reason, it hasn't been set up as a sales first business. And that isn't to say it can't change, but it's super important that the actual setup of the business from the start or as early on, if you're really
so what does that look like? Are we talking sales funnels, or what's the thing that I guess if there's a tool, is a tried and true way in which helps people keep going with that trajectory so they can scale and I guess convert sales quicker? Because even though it's fantastic to have long sales leads when you have that opportunity, but I think a lot of people, they get disheartened if it's going to take too long and they might walk away because they just don't have the cash flow to keep that business going.
Well, look, I think with any kind of sales business, with any kind of business, investing in a decent CRM from the start is a very smart move, because if you can capture all of your activity and your leads from the start, what you'll find is individuals that find prospecting intimidating is if they actually look over historical data in their business, if they've been going more than a couple of years. Prospecting becomes easy when you're actually just re-engineering, or you're reigniting some old leads that perhaps came through and you didn't have your shit together at the time to really sort of make sure you save them properly. So I think the first thing to make sure sales first is a decent CRM. Even you've got, there's a free version of HubSpot, for instance. So you can even just get, that from the start. So as long as you can capture as much as you can early on. The other thing with sales is to generate a sales culture, is to have a sales meeting, even if there's two of you in the business. Generating that commercial acumen and the sales in the business, and just checking in around those numbers and those pipelines is something else to do as well. The other thing is that sales is made harder when it's not automated. And what I mean by that is that there's so many different ways you can automate your sales. So just from a process point of view, from how you set up your sales funnel, and I'm not talking big, arduous sales funnels. I'm literally talking maybe 5 processes. I'm talking about some basic email templates. You've got some reminders even on Outlook. There's some other stuff you can do, some really, really basic stuff you can do, and all of which is for next to nothing. The other way is to ring fence your business development time from the start, and that business development time cannot be disturbed. Like, it's one of those things that is just so sacred. And if that is something that as a business owner or as a salesperson that you lead from the front with, then people will follow that. So there's some small kind of things you can do, but historically with businesses that are trying to become sales first, they tend to turn around and say, I just want to hire a sales gun.
Exactly. And put one person in the role and just have them exclusively work on sales.
Exclusively work on sales. Yeah. They're expensive. They don't know the product. They may be passionate about the product. And you pay them all this money, and I might as well flip a coin for you, because it could work or it could not. And I'm a career executive recruiter, right? I know people so well, and I can't even do that. So, so for me, it's like, okay, you're trying to solve a problem by throwing money at one person, and actually you're probably going to do some of your great profits on a solution that actually can be changed by some process re-engineering. And I think that the reason why I really, really wanted to get into this kind of sales mentoring world is that it's about changing how people think and feel about sales. So we all know we need to do business development if we're kind of in and around those roles, right? But we, often will think of lots of different reasons not to, perhaps. But if you have a better relationship with sales, and if you've got your processes and all your procedures set up and your life set up for it, it's super fun. And you can, when you've got a bit of structure around it and you feel differently about it, you'll get the wins, and then it will perpetuate that. You don't need to be a career salesperson to do that. And in a small business, there's no reason why 4 or 5 people can't do a bit of business development every week. There's no reason. It's just giving them the tools and actually reframing what it means.
Is there one piece of sort of automation or tech, you've mentioned a couple of examples there, that you think is like the bee's knees and that will really help people? Is there something that you think, oh my gosh, if you just did one thing today or this week or next week, it would be this?
Oh, it'd be like cloning amazing salespeople, wouldn't it?
Have you got that technology under wraps?
I'm working on it. So, look, there isn't a one-stop shop, but there's a few different technologies that I think people should look at. And Amber, you already use one of them because I booked in to speak to you this way. But you can use the diary management calendars. I mean, that's a really great, really cheap technology that will save you quite a lot of time back and forth. A lot of those things you'll find that clients will fall off the funnel when you're messing around with diaries. You miss their windows, they miss yours, and then it's all just too hard. So that's an easy win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone should just do that. And also just, frees you up to have to think about replying to just another email, which, if you add that up 100 times a day is a lot of time in your life.
Well, that's it. So I've mentioned HubSpot. I think the other technologies out there, there's quite a few that are, you've got Klaviyo, which is a really good sort of marketing mailing. Klaviyo is probably the best on that. And of course you have social media kind of aggregators like later.com. I quite like Later. It's very affordable and you can do some really good thought leadership on there, and you can just kind of do the sort of social media inputting and sort of leave it for 4 weeks, because obviously remember that is part of the sales process as well, especially when you're working with different strategic partners. So look, to answer your question, there isn't a one-stop shop in terms of one technology that covers everything. But if you just look at where you're spending too much of your time, I promise you there's something out there for you. There's so many beautiful widgets and wonderful plugins these days. I mean, we're in the world of automation. So I think the key thing is work out where you're spending most of your time, and if it's sort of going backwards and forwards, diary management, of course, that's an easy fix. I do find with sales though is that a lot of where people spend their time is the story they tell themselves. So the reasons not to call someone are basically 80% of the reasons why someone doesn't pick up the phone and contact a new prospect. So it's actually all to do with us as humans rather than
what's in our head
investing
sometimes
in automated tools.
Absolutely. You have mentioned mentors in our conversation today, but is there another one that sort of stands out for you particularly that's made such a big impact perhaps in your life or your business career?
So it was my first boss, actually. So her name's Marion, and she made her money by the time she was my age. So I'm the sweet young age of just turned 40, and she retired super early, and she was just so generous and wise. And I worked for her when I was 21, and I never really knew how just wonderful she was. She was super fun and sorry, she is super fun, but she was always really firm. And so she had this really amazing sort of balance between warmth and also firmness. You could never take the mickey out of her. She was really boundaried, and she's just, and still is, incredible to me. And I'm very fond of her. And then in terms of mentors, look, I'm a massive Brené Brown, Adam Grant, Simon Sinek fan. I just think some of their content is it's progressive. It's the way I sort of think and feel, really. So I really, really love their work. So, but in terms of mentors, like, I honestly think that I learn from every single person that, I speak to, like even speaking to you just for, 5 minutes before we jumped on the recording, I learned from you. And I think that I am so lucky. I just have so many people around me that I'm just really fond of, and they just teach me something every day. So that just feeds my soul.
If we spoke in a year's time, what would be the number one thing you have hoped to have changed in your career or business, and why?
I want to truly work from anywhere. So with my kids at school, they're sort of kindy in year one. So
you've got a while to go.
Yes, they've got a while to go. And I don't think education is really, I think I'm okay taking them out of school for a bit.
Yeah.
So I'm actually in the process. So we bought a house in Queenstown last year. So I'm just in the process of convincing my lovely husband to let us work from there for 3 months of next year. So that's my plan. I'm also looking to exit, but not from a sale, but just looking to exit one of my businesses just to free up a bit more time. So they're probably not as high end.
Lots of exciting things.
Sorry?
That's very exciting. There's lots of exciting things.
Oh, do you think so? I don't know. Sometimes I need bigger, hairier goals, but they're my mildly hairy goals.
A final takeaway message for us today on the politics of business development.
Sales is fun. And if you can make it work for you and you can reframe how you feel about it, your revenue will most certainly grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you today and reconnect, obviously, after such a long time from seeing each other. If you do want to find out more about what Victoria Butt does or her businesses, there are some details on our show notes. Until next time, take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Amber.
Thanks so much for listening today. If you've enjoyed the politics of everything, I thrive on your feedback. So please add a short review and share the podcast with your network through Apple, Spotify, and all the usual suspects. I'm always on the hunt for new and diverse guests, so if you or someone you know has a fresh idea you're busting to get out there, please email me at amber@amberdanes.com and my crew will get back to you very soon.